الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين وتبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين أما بعد. It's always a pleasure to be here. Always brings back memory. For the organizers for inviting me. I do apologize because I know sometimes it's my end of the shortcoming that I don't show up here as much. So today, to be honest, I was thinking of what we should talk about. Now, the Prophet ﷺ had mentioned, he said that usually in a khutbah he says, وَأَحْسَنُ الْحَدِيثِ كِتَابُ اللَّهِ وَخَيْرُ الْهَدْيِ هَدْيُ مُحَمَّدٍ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وسلم. So the best of speech is the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the best of guidance is the guidance of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So alhamdulillah, we did start with Hypocrisy and with prayers obviously in Fajr. So I'd like to start with the hadith from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which would link to the topic I want to talk about. So this particular hadith is narrated by Imam Muslim rahimahullah, and it's narrated by Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, part of the hadith, إِنَّ شَرَّ النَّاسِ ذُو الْوَجْهَيْنِ مَنْ يَأْتِي إِلَى هَؤُلَاءِ بِوَجْهٍ وَإِلَى هَؤُلَاءِ بِوَجْهٍ. And another hadith by Sunan Abi Dawud, the Prophet ﷺ said, مِنْ شَرِّ النَّاسِ. So the translation is that the Prophet ﷺ said that the worst of people, or the most evil of people, شَرِّ النَّاسِ, the most evil of people, or the worst of people, are the two-faced. The person who's two-faced, who goes to one group with one face, and towards another group with one face. And in the other narration, it says from among the worst people is the one who's two-faced. Now when these commentators of hadith, the scholars of hadith and scholars of Islam, when they commented on this hadith, they said that this has to do with the individual who perhaps is a hypocrite, and who really is sitting on the fence, who doesn't want to upset either parties, who would go to this side and to kind of show that he's good with them, he's along with them, the Imaan is there, and Islam is there, and at the same time, he doesn't want to upset the other side, just in case they are victorious, or there's any need or benefit from the other side, and he go to them, and then he would say, no, I'm amongst you, right? I am with you, I'm not with the other people type of deal. Whether he says it by behavior or by speech. Now what's interesting is that because we understand that hypocrisy is a different level. Nifaq is a different level. There's a level that obviously will take you out of Islam, which is internally you are harboring disbelief, and outwardly you're expressing belief. And you can see this if you're talking about a person who goes to the Muslims and he says, I'm among you and so forth, but in reality he doesn't believe, and that he harbors disbelief in there. And then he goes to non-Muslims, and then he obviously says, I'm with you, which is probably more true. But once again, because we mentioned that hypocrisy is different levels, there is some individuals that would have the characteristics of hypocrisy, but yet they're still Muslims. And this is really more particularly the category I'm more concerned about. And this is what the scholars have commented. And this is an individual who perhaps is a Muslim, but yet in front of the pious people, he goes to the pious individuals, and he expresses one characteristic, one behavior. And then he goes to the people who have characteristics of immorality, lewdness behavior. And then he shows the other face. Starts talking the way they talk. Acts the way they act. And so they said this individual is underneath that hadith at the same time. The reason I'm mentioning this is because if we look around us, it's interesting whether it's because of the world of social media or the environment we're in. I'm not quite sure if it's combined or what it is. We tend to see that characteristic of that second category quite often. People in the masjid, they would come to the masjid, they would behave one way. At home, they behave a specific way. Yet maybe at work or at school, completely different personality. Something completely different. And it's more prevalent in the youth generation, particularly I'm talking about high schoolers and college students and young adults. Because they're the ones that at home, sometimes they have to behave one way, and in the masjid behave one other way, but yet at school or college among their friends, they act another way. But it's also, yes, present in those who are older. And what's even more concerning is that it actually starts at a much younger age. And when it starts at that younger age, it really starts just circumstantial, but it builds up. And this is based on research that's been done. And they found out that it starts maybe between the age of 3 to 6 years old. Many of the children, when they go to public schools and they have friends that are Muslims, they go with the flow. So at school and with their friends, they never mention that they're Muslim. They never express their Islamic behavior. They never mention Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or even prayers, whatever the case is. They just go along with the flow because it's easier. And then at home, the Quran comes in, the prayer comes in, at the masjid they're also another behavior. But even what's more interesting is that their actual physical behavior and the way they speak is completely different. It's as if they have two different personalities. One personality is at home and the masjid, the other personality is at school with friends. It starts at that age, and they discovered that it is just easy for them to go along the situation, the environment, the circumstances. But what's concerning is, what's the root cause of this? And what happens if this continues as it is? When it does that, we end up with a bit of a dichotomy. Once again, dual personalities. We end up with these kids in the future becoming a hafiz, but at school, something else. In college, they're still at the MSA, but after the MSA events, something else. Even when they go older, this continues and becomes worse, but it becomes compounded. They, once again, in the masjid, they're one characteristic, but then when they get married and at home with their spouses, subhanAllah, a completely different person. When they're young, we understand, but when they get older, this becomes a bit more complicated. But to indicate why this goes under the hadith of the hypocrisy is because an individual like this, whether they like it or not, they're going to be forced in a situation to lie and deceive. Because they have that dual personality. They're either going to lie to individuals or lying to themselves. And increasingly, they're going to have to choose between one of the two paths. Unfortunately, most of the time, when they're younger, at least in high school, they don't exactly pick the correct one. They tend to still go with the flow. And in college, this is when it really shows more often. They're really going to have to pick between either becoming a bit, no, I have to go practice my religion as it should be, or they take the other side. And whomever went to, studied in college in this year, they would see that. Sometimes they even, they had no individuals in the beginning of the year. They start one way, but towards the, the end of their college year, they steer it the other direction. You will never stay in that middle ground. You will clearly pick one or the other because you're going to have to be honest with yourself. Because an individual who's like that, who has that two personality, they have specific characteristics. One is they themselves lose track of who they really are. Who am I really? Am I the Muslim who wants to go obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who has that persona as in the masjid, who recites Quran? Or am I this other individual who has this lewd behavior? And what comes even worse is that behavior itself, compounded once again with the facing the truth and the reality of things, and maybe perhaps they have misconceptions, that those characteristics of hypocrisy might even lead sometimes to true hypocrisy. Right? We do hear sometimes, once again because of an interesting research paper that comes out, individuals who really harbor atheism but stand in the minbar and lead the prayers. May Allah save us from this. But it does exist. Right? And when you ask them why, it's because it's easier that way. Because of the community that knows them, their parents, but they're harboring something else. And so it is very dangerous. It can lead to that route. Now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't mention those in the Quran. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Surah Al-Baqarah, both verses, multiple verses, but those two particular verses on Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, يُخَادِعُونَ اللَّهَ وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَمَا يَخْدَعُونَ إِلَّا أَنفُسَهُم فِي قُلُوبِهِم مَرَضٌ فزادهم الله مرضا ولهم عذاب أليم بما كانوا يكذبون. Okay. And so this particular, now Sheikh? I thought somebody said something right. Now this particular verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that they intend to deceive, or they're doing this, the two-faced. They're intending this, يُخَادِعُونَ اللَّهَ وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا. They want to deceive Allah and those who believe. However, in reality, whom are they deceiving? Themselves. And they're unaware of it. Why? فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ مَرَضٍ. There is diseases in their heart. And so Allah increasing that disease because of their own action. Because you have to remember, with every sin and every lie they perform, it decreases their Imaan. Right? It places the dot on their heart. And so it increases that disease in their heart. And in the end, they have a severe torment. Why? Because of the deceiving and the lying they used to perform. And in the other verse a bit lower, in the same surah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَإِذَا لَقُوا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا قَالُوا آمَنَّا وَإِذَا خَلَوْا إِلَى شَيَاطِينِهِمْ قَالُوا إِنَّا مَعَكُمْ إِنَّمَا نَحْنُ مُسْتَهْزِئِينَ. You find these particular individuals, they say, when they meet the believers, the pious, they say, we are with you. However, when they are with among the people who are evil or bad, they say, we are with you. We're just making fun of them. Because whatever reason it is, maybe because it's a lack of confidence, maybe because of the misconception they might have, right? And it's pretty prevalent. It's cool to be having lewd behavior. It's cool to kind of do things that are haram. It's like, why are you uptight becoming so religious? Why are you so backwards? And so they use these terminologies, and unfortunately people buy it. Even we ourselves sometimes at one point, we want to hold the Muslim middle ground. We forget that we are not the ones that judge what is the middle ground, but rather it's Allah and the Prophet. The Prophet ﷺ was on the middle ground. So we have to measure our practice to his practice, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Right? Where do we measure? Anything less is extreme. Anything more is also extreme. This is the reality it is. And so when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned this, He mentioned that the reason behind it is the disease of the heart. But I'm going to stop here for a second, and I really want to get your feedback on this, because I hate talking for too long. Is from your opinion, what is it that forces a person or causes a person to develop that two-faced personality? And I might have mentioned something in the middle, but I'd like to hear your feedback too. Because we need to figure out what the solution is. Whether we're adult or high school or college students, whatever the case is. But it's important for us to be aware of our younger children. So what is it that causes us, or causes certain individuals among us to develop that dual personality, that two-faced personality? Okay. Yes?
I think they see the parents.
Excellent. That's one thing, right? Parents. Sometimes as parents, we ourselves might even result in that. So when the parents preach Islam and don't practice it, they only practice it in the masjid. But at home, they don't see recitation of the Quran. The prayers are not preferred on time. The dress attire is not the correct one. Whether it's the father himself is not wearing the proper Islamic attire, or the mother is not wearing the hijab, or even, sometimes even not the proper hijab. But with that action itself, when you're preaching something, you're acting something else, you're forcing the child to do one of two things. Either to lose trust in you, because you believe the teachings. And to be honest, this is great if the child believes that. It is great. Because then he's saying that Islam is true and what you're doing is wrong. But what happens is the nature of the child to imitate and emulate the parents. And so what are they going to do? They're going to understand that the teachings are there, but maybe they shouldn't be as they are. There's flexibility. We don't have to abide by it. It's okay to do this and that. In fact, this might even develop an idea that we don't need to practice it at all, and this is a bit too extreme. Those who do this are a bit too uptight. It is not classy. It is not modern. And so they tend to develop sometimes that personality. That's one of them. Sometimes we do that ourselves as parents. It's just one example, but sometimes there are multiple examples of that. But the most important thing is for us and our children to prevent that is to us themselves practice their religion as it should be. And whenever we do something wrong, we admit that it is wrong. We have to admit it to correct that idea, right? We have to bite the bullet, press on our pride, and admit to the child when they catch us doing something that is haram and say, yes, I did something wrong. And I have no excuse. Because if you try to bring excuses, then you're teaching them that this is circumstantial. That it's okay in sometimes to sin. And so they start developing that, once again, dual personalities. So we need to be careful of that. That's a great example. Anything else?
Definitely Islamophobia, because that makes you less confident in expressing what you believe in.
Islamophobia, right? The fear of being, somebody doing something towards you, right? Being bullied or whatever the case is, the fear of becoming a Muslim. That is true. That's your concern. Especially for the younger generation when they still don't have confidence. That is very real, right? It's a good one. Anything else?
Peer pressure.
Hold on.